We have breaking news overseas. Prince Harry will reportedly be joined by Meghan and his children during his visit to the UK.
But she will reportedly be travelling here to the UK and bringing their two children with her, paving the way for an emotional reunion with the King.
The Duchess of Sussex now expected to come here to the UK and meet Prince Harry.
Does this put us in a situation where there is a constitutional crisis? How long can the King, who has been incredibly generous in extending the olive branch, in allowing them to have and retain those titles, when I think we've moved so far from the Sandringham Summit and what was agreed then, how far can Harry and Meghan continue to push it?
They're here. Meghan Markle, Archie, and Lilibet did not stay out of sight in California. Instead, they quietly arrived in the United Kingdom, made their way to Highgrove, and joined Prince Harry for a private meeting with King Charles and Queen Camilla. If these reports are accurate, it would mark one of the biggest surprises of the entire visit. For days, the story looked completely different. There were mixed reports, public denials, security concerns, disagreements behind palace doors, and claims that the family visit had completely fallen apart. Then everything suddenly took another turn. So did all that, will they, won't they, speculation end up working in the Sussexes' favour? Now, one small detail from this week suddenly stands out much more. People kept asking the same questions every time Harry appeared in public. Why was he smiling? Why was he laughing? Why did he seem so calm after losing a major court case, dealing with another dispute over palace accommodations, and facing headlines that made his trip look like a total mess?
Just a few hours later, right before we sat down, King Charles put out a statement from Buckingham Palace saying they've withdrawn the invitation. Prince Harry will not be staying there because they gave him a deadline and he did not meet it.
Now there may finally be an explanation. Harry may have already known that Meghan and the children were on their way. He may have known that the private meeting was still going ahead. While the public believed his week was unraveling, Harry may have been keeping the most important plan completely under wraps, setting the stage for one headline-making moment that changed the conversation. Harry was not just walking around Britain with nothing left to hope for. If these reports are accurate, he may have been counting down the hours until Meghan and the children arrived, knowing that one private meeting with King Charles could shift the spotlight away from everything else that had happened during the trip. But this surprise also raises even bigger questions. Why was everything kept so quiet? Why did Meghan stay away from every public appearance? Why were Harry's events presented as solo engagements while the rest of his family stayed completely out of sight? And why did confirmation only come after the reported meeting had already taken place? This doesn't look like a typical family visit. It appears to have been handled very carefully from beginning to end, and that makes many people wonder why. After all, a public meeting with King Charles could have created huge positive attention. Even a single official photo might have completely changed the public conversation and given their image a major boost almost overnight. So why keep everything so secret? And what was really happening behind the scenes? Those are the questions that have people talking now. If the reports are accurate, the silence may not have been an accident at all. It may have been one of the key conditions for making the private meeting happen in the first place. Before Harry even arrived in Britain, several reports claimed that any private family meeting would come with very clear rules.
I think Prince Harry, and if Meghan were traveling with him, she would be doing the same. They'd be taking pictures of things, they'd be recording, they'd have recording devices up here and there and in their cooch and their snatch all over.
According to those reports, there would be no photographers, no public announcements, no social media posts afterward, and no commercial use of anything connected to the visit. That would also mean no future interviews discussing private conversations, no revealing what King Charles may have said behind closed doors, and no turning the visit into material for future media projects. If those reports are correct, the message from the palace seemed straightforward. Keep this meeting completely private and protect it from becoming part of a documentary, a podcast, a memoir, a television special, or any other commercial project. After everything that has happened over the past few years, it's easy to understand why privacy would reportedly be treated as a top priority. But that leads to an even bigger question. Can that level of privacy actually last? That's where the situation becomes much more interesting. Reports suggest Harry reassured his father that the details of the meeting would remain private. However, other reports have also claimed that camera crews were seen following parts of the trip, and that has naturally sparked even more speculation. If the visit was truly meant to stay completely private, then many people are asking the same thing. What exactly was being filmed? Was it connected to the Invictus Games? Was it simply background footage for another project? Was it personal family footage that will never be released? Or was it something entirely different? At this stage, there has been no public confirmation explaining the purpose, leaving plenty of room for questions. That's why some royal watchers remain skeptical. If one of the reported conditions was to keep the royal family separate from commercial projects, then reports about cameras naturally attract attention. Whether those reports are connected to the meeting itself or to something unrelated remains unclear, but the timing has certainly fueled more discussion. Meghan's reported presence only adds another layer to the conversation. She has long been recognized as someone who understands the impact of public attention, carefully timed appearances, and memorable images. Supporters and critics alike often point to how powerful a single photograph can be in shaping headlines. If this visit was handled as carefully as reports suggest, many people are now wondering whether every decision, from staying out of sight to the timing of the news, was part of a much larger strategy. A single photograph of King Charles standing beside Archie and Lilibet would likely have spread across the world within minutes. News outlets, television programs, and social media platforms would almost certainly have been filled with the image. In the same way, a photograph of Meghan arriving at Highgrove could have dominated headlines everywhere and sparked a completely new round of discussion about her relationship with the royal family. One carefully timed picture could have shifted the tone of the entire visit almost instantly. So that raises an obvious question. If the reported meeting really happened, why agree to such a private arrangement that produced no official photographs and no public celebration? Why accept strict conditions if there was no immediate public benefit? Some observers believe the answer could be that rebuilding family relationships was more important than publicity on this occasion. Others think there may have been a longer-term strategy that simply hasn't become visible yet. Another possibility is that the real value of the visit isn't meant to be seen right away. Instead of creating headlines during the meeting itself, the impact could come later through carefully managed public appearances, future projects, or a broader change in how the story is presented. That's one reason why reports about camera crews have attracted so much attention. If cameras really were present during parts of the trip, many people naturally want to know exactly what they were recording and what, if anything, that footage might eventually be used for. According to reports, the family had already been spending time elsewhere in Europe before quietly entering the United Kingdom. If that's accurate, it may have allowed them to stay close without confirming their final plans too early. That approach would have made it much easier to adjust schedules, finalize security arrangements, and avoid drawing attention before everything was ready. Meanwhile, Harry continued attending his public engagements while Meghan reportedly stayed away from the cameras. If that was part of the plan, it created two very different public stories at the same time. The media focused almost entirely on Harry's appearances, while any possible family movements remained largely out of sight. Then, once the reported security arrangements and family schedule were in place, they could travel to Highgrove quietly, avoiding the large public spectacle that many believed might disrupt the visit. If that was the strategy, it certainly appears to have kept people guessing until the very end. Now attention turns to what happens next. Will the Sussexes leave Britain without sharing any details about the reported meeting? Will there be no official photographs, no emotional public statement, and no anonymous sources describing what was said behind closed doors? Will Meghan return to California and allow the visit to remain entirely private, just as some reports suggested was expected? Or could small pieces of information begin emerging over the coming days?
Okay, no conversation is sacred. When you're Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, everything is up for public consumption, right? Everything is worth $1 amount because Meghan Markle, she's a little huckster who will sell herself out to the highest bidder.
Could carefully selected details gradually appear, each adding another chapter to the story and shaping public discussion without revealing everything? That's another question many royal watchers are asking as they wait to see what happens next. But Highgrove may not have been the only important destination connected to this visit. Another question is now hanging over the entire trip, and it involves a place that holds deep personal meaning for Harry. Reports and speculation have suggested the family could also visit Althorp, the estate where Princess Diana is buried. If that happens, it would add another emotional layer to an already closely watched journey and would almost certainly become another major point of public interest. On the surface, a visit to Althorp would seem completely understandable. If the reports are accurate, Harry may simply want Archie and Lilibet to learn more about the grandmother they never had the chance to meet. For any family, visiting a place with such deep personal meaning could be an emotional and private experience. It would not be unusual for a parent to want to share family history with their children in a quiet and respectful way. But another detail has added a new layer to the discussion. Reports have claimed that camera crews may already be connected to Harry's work surrounding the Invictus Games. At the same time, there has also been speculation about possible future projects related to the 30th anniversary of Princess Diana's passing. None of those reports have been officially confirmed, but together they have prompted many people to ask whether there is more to this trip than first appeared. That raises another important question. Was this journey planned only to support a possible reconciliation with King Charles, or was a visit to Althorpe always expected to be part of the schedule? If both destinations were included from the beginning, it could explain why so much attention has been focused on the family's movements throughout the trip. Many observers also point to what they see as an interesting contrast. Reports suggested that any time spent with members of the royal family would remain completely private. According to those claims, there would be no cameras during family meetings, no commercial use of the visit, no social media posts highlighting private moments, and no interviews discussing conversations that took place behind closed doors. But what if those reported conditions applied only to the meeting itself? Some commentators have wondered whether cameras, if they were present for unrelated projects, could remain away from Highgrove while later filming different parts of the journey that were not connected to the private family gathering. There is no public evidence that this happened, but the possibility has become part of the wider speculation surrounding the visit. If something like that were to happen, it would likely attract enormous public attention. A reported meeting between a grandfather and his grandchildren would already be a major news story. But images of Harry walking with Archie and Lilibet at a place associated with Princess Diana would almost certainly generate worldwide headlines because of the emotional significance many people attach to Diana's legacy. That is why some royal watchers continue asking questions about the purpose of the trip. Was Meghan's reported visit mainly about strengthening family relationships? Were the children brought to spend time with King Charles? Or were there multiple reasons for making the journey, including other personal or professional commitments? At this stage, those questions remain unanswered. The discussion also continues because of the reports involving cameras and possible future projects. If no footage connected to the visit is ever released, many people may view the trip as exactly what it appeared to be: a private family visit. But if images or video from other parts of the journey eventually become public, fresh questions will almost certainly follow about how the entire visit was planned and what its different purposes may have been. Or could it eventually appear that the reported reconciliation with King Charles became the public-facing family story, while a possible visit to Diana's resting place carried the deeper emotional significance? That's one reason some observers believe so much effort may have gone into keeping the plans out of the public eye until the very last moment.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done.
If the reports are accurate, the secrecy itself may have been an important part of the strategy. Looking back, several details suddenly seem to fit together in a different way. It could explain why Harry appeared so relaxed throughout the week. It could explain why he seemed unusually confident despite several difficult headlines. And it may even help explain why Meghan reportedly chose to return to Britain after spending years largely away from public royal events. If Highgrove was the surprise that caught everyone's attention, some commentators now wonder whether another stop on the trip could still become the most talked about part of the entire story. For days, the media focused on one question after another. Had Meghan decided not to come? Had she completely ruled out returning to the United Kingdom? News reports and commentators debated every possibility, while stories about security concerns fueled even more speculation. Some reports even suggested those issues had prevented any meaningful family reunion from taking place. Meanwhile, Harry was photographed attending engagements on his own. Every appearance seemed to reinforce the idea that he had travelled without his family. In many ways, Meghan's absence became almost as big a headline as the events Harry was attending. Then, according to later reports, the story suddenly shifted. Instead of rejecting Britain altogether, Meghan may have simply stayed away from the public-facing part of the visit while remaining out of sight until the reported private meeting. The timing has also become a major talking point. Before news of the reported meeting emerged, Harry's week appeared to be filled with setbacks. Headlines focused heavily on the dismissal of his legal case involving the publisher of the Daily Mail, leading many to describe the trip as increasingly difficult. Yet what happened next surprised a lot of people. Despite the disappointing legal news, Harry continued with his Invictus commitments, appeared calm in public, smiled as he greeted people, and even made a light-hearted comment about the warm weather. His attitude stood out because it seemed so different from what many expected after such a widely reported setback. That reaction left plenty of people wondering what was really going through his mind. Was he simply determined not to let the headlines affect him in public? Was he avoiding giving photographers the disappointed expression they might have been hoping to capture? Or, if the later reports are accurate, did he already know something the public did not? That an important private family meeting was still ahead, giving him every reason to stay focused despite everything else happening around him? Or was Harry smiling because he knew something the public didn't? If the reports are accurate, he may have already known that Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet were getting closer to Britain while everyone else believed he was facing the week on his own. That possibility has caused many people to look back at his public appearances in a completely different way. Throughout the legal fallout and the public attention surrounding his trip, Meghan did not appear beside Harry. She was not seen at his Invictus engagements, she did not step into the spotlight, and she avoided the crowds, the media questions, and the intense public attention that would almost certainly have followed her. Then, according to later reports, she arrived only for what may have been the most significant private family moment of the entire visit. If that's how events unfolded, it's easy to understand why people are now debating the timing. As expected, the reactions have been very different. Critics argue that Meghan stayed away from the most difficult parts of the trip and only became involved when the possibility of a private family meeting emerged. Supporters see it differently, saying she prioritized protecting her children and respected the reported request for privacy surrounding any family gathering. Without official confirmation of every detail, both viewpoints continue to be discussed, and the debate shows no sign of slowing down. That also leads to another question. Was this simply a case of putting family relationships first, even if it meant staying completely out of public view? Or was the decision based on choosing the part of the visit that carried the greatest long-term importance while avoiding the intense media attention surrounding the rest of the trip? At this stage, those questions remain matters of public speculation rather than established fact. Instead of ending the discussion, the secrecy surrounding the reported visit has only created even more curiosity. Every new report seems to generate another question, and every unanswered detail encourages fresh theories about what may have happened behind the scenes. Another issue that continues to attract attention involves the reported understanding between the Sussexes and the royal family. According to several reports, Harry and Meghan were free to continue their commercial work in the United States, but any private time spent with members of the royal family in Britain was expected to remain completely separate from business activities. That reportedly meant no commercial promotion connected to private family meetings, no filming those moments, and no using them as material for future media projects. On paper, that sounds straightforward enough. However, questions began almost immediately after reports surfaced that camera crews might also be involved with Harry's Invictus-related activities. If those reports are accurate, filming a public charitable event would be very different from filming a private meeting with King Charles.
I have made, tens of millions of dollars, at least hundreds of millions of dollars from Netflix, reality shows, book deals. Why is it the taxpayer's job and responsibility to pay for you to have security? Every other celebrity, every other Tom, Dick, and Harry in Hollywood can pay for their own personal and private security. Why is it the taxpayer's job in the UK?
The two situations are not the same, and there has been no public evidence suggesting that any private royal meeting was recorded. Even so, some commentators believe the situation creates a grey area. Once cameras are already travelling as part of a wider production, people naturally begin asking where coverage of a public charity event ends and where footage for other future projects might begin. That same discussion has expanded to include reports of a possible visit to Althorpe, Princess Diana's family estate and final resting place. There has also been speculation about whether footage connected to Diana could be gathered for a future documentary or anniversary project. Those reports remain unconfirmed, but together they have added another layer of interest to a trip that has already generated weeks of headlines and countless questions about what really happened behind the scenes. If cameras were ever seen near a reported visit to Althorp, the debate over privacy would likely become even more intense. For many people, that would create an obvious contrast. On one hand, the reported meeting at Highgrove has been described as so private that no official photographs were released. On the other hand, if another part of the journey were ever filmed for a future project, many observers would naturally begin asking whether the line between private and public had become blurred. That possibility has fueled plenty of discussion. If the palace insisted that any meeting with King Charles remain completely private, could it also influence what happened once Harry and Meghan left royal property? Or would any activities after that point be treated as separate from the reported family gathering? Those are questions that continue to be debated because there has been no official explanation covering every detail of the trip. The conversation also brings back another issue that has followed the relationship between the Sussexes and the royal family for years: trust. For royal officials, privacy is not only about making sure cameras stay outside a room. It is also about protecting private conversations from being repeated later, whether through interviews, books, documentaries, or other public projects. Many commentators have suggested that this concern goes beyond photographs or video footage. Even if every phone, camera, and recording device remained outside during a private meeting, everyone present would still remember what was said. That's why some observers believe the greatest challenge has never been the technology itself. Instead, they argue that it comes down to confidence that private conversations will remain private long after the meeting has ended. According to many reports, that question of trust has been a sensitive issue for several years. Because of that history, the reported conditions surrounding this visit have attracted even more attention. Claims that there would be no cameras, no social media posts, and no public discussion of private conversations have been interpreted by many as an effort to avoid repeating past controversies. While those reported conditions have not been officially confirmed, they have become a major part of the public conversation. If those reports are accurate, agreeing to those expectations may have been viewed as an important step toward making the meeting possible. After all, Harry has repeatedly spoken in the past about his desire to spend time with his family in Britain, while also expressing concerns about security arrangements. He has argued that changes to his security protection have made visits more difficult and have affected his ability to bring Meghan and their children to the United Kingdom. That makes the events of this trip especially notable. Despite ongoing discussions about security, reports of accommodation disagreements, and weeks of speculation about whether a family meeting would happen at all, the Sussexes reportedly managed to travel to Britain quietly and reach Highgrove without creating the major public spectacle that many people had expected. If that account is accurate, it suggests that careful planning and strict privacy may have played a significant role in making the visit possible. That part of the story is now likely to become a major talking point. If the reports are accurate, some people will argue that this visit raises new questions about Harry's long-running concerns over security in the United Kingdom. They will point out that Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet reportedly travelled to Britain without attracting public attention, avoided the kind of large airport scenes many expected, moved quietly through the country, and completed the reported visit without any major public disruption. From that perspective, some observers are already asking the obvious question. If the family was able to arrive safely and privately on this occasion, why did earlier reports suggest the visit was so difficult to arrange? Why did it appear, at various points, that the entire plan might fall apart before it even began? Of course, Harry's position may be very different. He has consistently argued that each visit presents its own unique security challenges, and that special arrangements made for one trip cannot automatically be expected for every future visit. If that is his view, then one successful journey would not necessarily resolve the broader legal and security issues he has raised over the years. Those concerns, from his perspective, could still remain very real despite this reported outcome.
It's about so much more than just his legal battles. It's about his emotional battle as well with his own family, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're still here, aren't we? Kind of 6 years after he left royal duties and all the water under the bridge. He hasn't moved forward at all. You know, we've said it before. He can't seem to look forward. He's always looking backwards. And I don't think ultimately the security situation hasn't changed. If the UK authority are assessing your visit on a case-by-case basis and you tell them what you plan to do,
Even so, public perception often focuses more on what people can see than on the details behind the scenes. The image created by this trip is a powerful one. According to the reports, the family came to Britain. The private meeting reportedly took place. The visit remained largely out of public view until afterward, and everyone involved completed the journey safely. Whether or not that changes the wider security debate, it is likely to become part of future discussions. It's also worth considering how much planning may have gone into keeping everything quiet. If the reports are correct, maintaining secrecy would have required careful coordination from everyone involved. Just one unexpected leak could have changed everything. A single airport photograph might have attracted intense media attention. A public statement at the wrong moment could have shifted the headlines. Even one unexpected development might have complicated the reported meeting before it ever happened. That possibility could also explain Harry's public behavior throughout the week. Despite facing difficult headlines, legal setbacks, and constant media attention, he continued attending scheduled engagements, smiled during public appearances, and avoided dramatic public confrontations. Some observers believe that remaining calm may have helped keep the reported family plans on track until everything was complete. Although Harry publicly criticized the outcome of his legal case, he did not immediately launch into a lengthy television interview while the reported reunion remained uncertain. Likewise, Meghan did not make public announcements from Britain or post updates that might have drawn extra attention to the family's movements. According to reports, the palace also remained unusually quiet, with very little official information emerging before the reported meeting. Whether by design or coincidence, each side appeared to avoid escalating the situation during those critical days. Now that the reported meeting has become part of the public conversation, attention naturally shifts to a much bigger question. What was the main purpose behind the visit? Was it simply about giving a grandfather the chance to spend time with his grandchildren after a long period apart? Was it an opportunity for Harry to rebuild an important family relationship? Was Meghan hoping to support a quieter approach while avoiding the intense public spotlight? Or could this be the first step in a much longer process of improving relations between the Sussexes and the royal family? At this stage, there are no definitive answers. But the reported visit has certainly reopened a conversation that many people believed had reached a dead end, and every new detail continues to add another layer to one of the most closely watched royal stories of the year. Or could this eventually become the opening chapter of a future project that shares almost every part of the journey, except the private moments the palace reportedly wanted to keep protected? That's another question many royal watchers are now asking. At this stage, nobody knows what, if anything, will happen next, but the answer may depend less on what is said and more on what remains unsaid. If weeks and months pass without private details being revealed, without unexpected photographs appearing, and without the reported family reunion becoming part of a commercial project, many people may see that as an important sign. It could suggest that the privacy surrounding the meeting was respected from beginning to end. For those watching closely, silence itself could become one of the strongest signals that trust is slowly being rebuilt after years of public disagreements and highly publicized tensions. And there is one final twist that makes this entire situation even more fascinating. The same secrecy that reportedly protected the private meeting may also have created the biggest surprise of the whole trip. For days, headlines suggested Meghan had stayed away from Britain. Harry appeared at public engagements on his own, and many people believed the idea of a family reunion had completely fallen apart. Then, according to later reports, everything changed almost overnight. Meghan had reportedly been in Britain after all, completely reshaping the story that had dominated headlines for days. Whether that happened by careful planning or simple timing, the mystery generated enormous attention. In many ways, the unanswered questions became just as compelling as the reported meeting itself. That's why so many people believe this story is far from finished. The reported reunion may have taken place, but what happens after the Sussexes leave Highgrove could prove just as important. Will the privacy surrounding the visit truly hold? Or will new details slowly emerge over time? For now, one thing seems clear. What looked like Harry's most difficult week ended with a reported development that almost nobody expected, completely changing the conversation in the final moments. Harry faced one setback after another. He lost a major court battle, found himself at the center of another royal disagreement, and, for much of the week, appeared to be facing everything alone. But if the reports are accurate, a very different story was unfolding behind the scenes. Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet were reportedly making their way closer to Britain, and that possibility gives Harry's calm attitude and confident smile a completely different meaning. Suddenly, the secrecy seems to have had a purpose, but the bigger question about the motive still remains. So what do you think really happened? Was this simply a genuine private family reunion, carefully protected from cameras and public attention so everyone involved could meet in peace? Or was it the first carefully planned step in a much larger strategy that has yet to fully unfold? Why do you think Meghan reportedly agreed to such strict privacy when the Sussexes' story has so often played out in the public eye? Will the reported conditions surrounding the Highgrove meeting continue to be respected after they return to America? And if cameras eventually appear during another deeply personal part of the journey, how do you think people will react? Now it's your turn to weigh in. Was Harry smiling because he already knew the biggest surprise of the trip was about to happen? Did Meghan truly decide that family mattered more than public attention this time? Or do you think the Sussexes simply managed one of their most carefully planned public moments yet? Share your thoughts and your theory in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.